Hello, and welcome to another edition of Around the Track with me, Shirl Penney, the most exciting 15 minutes in wealth management. I'm super excited about this episode because I'm joined by my dear friend, Tom Durkin, and we've been spending some time prior to recording this, recording some voiceovers, some sizzle reel, and some introductory pieces for Around the Track, which I'm going to be able to use in the future, which Tom, in essence, will kind of make you a bit of my co-host going forward. So thank you for doing that, and thank you for being here with me on Around the Track.
Very good. And I don't expect top billing. We'll leave that to you, Shirl, but Shirl Penney with Tom Durkin.
So I think anyone certainly around racing knows Tom Durkin. If you're not around racing, I'm an owner. Thoroughbred horses have been for quite some time. And in no disrespect to anyone else who's been a race caller, I think Tom Durkin is the best to have ever done it. Some of the best racing experiences that I've had at Saratoga and other tracks in and around New York have been watching some of the biggest races in American history. And Tom has called them. He's called some of the most exciting Triple Crown races, Kentucky Derbies, early on the Breeders' Cup. So it's really an honor for me to have this conversation with you, Tom. So thank you.
Yeah, pleasure to be here.
All right. So you know the rules with Around the Track. We have 8 questions. We have to get through them to go around the track together in less than 15 minutes. So let's jump in. The first question for you, hopefully, is an easy one, pretty straightforward. But as you know, in racing, breaking from the gate matters a lot. So the first question is, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get started as a sportscaster, and why did you jump into horse racing as an announcer?
Both of those were based on lies, like all great careers. I really didn't have a lot of interest in horse racing. I grew up in Chicago, and my dad would take me to the track every now and then. But so I was hanging out on the corner, as we did every day, and I was reading the Chicago Sun-Times, waiting for my buddies to show up. And one of my neighbors, neighbor lady, Mrs. Tennant, was on her way to the corner, and she said, "Hi, Tom, how are you?" And I go, "Oh, Mrs. Tennant, how are you?" And I had the paper there in front of me, and I happened to be turned to the sports section, which had the racing page there. She goes, "Oh, you play the horses?" And I went, yeah, I do a little bit." And I said, "Well, who do you like in the first race?" And I looked down and I went, 2 Robin Hoods, looks good. "Okay, bye, Tom." And just for the fun of it, I looked at the paper, and the next day he paid $12.80 to win. At that point, I'm hooked.
Yeah.
And I grew up in Chicago, and the track announcer there was a guy named Phil Georgieff, who was dynamic and fun and exciting, and that's who I wanted to be. And luckily, turned out well for me.
So tell us about your first race call, or maybe one that stands out within the first race calls, and then how did you go from there, over the course of your career to really improving and mastering your craft?
Well, and another great lie, a friend of mine, I've made it known to everybody that I wanted to be a racetracker. At this point, I'm in college. And people back in 1971 were hitchhiking, and my buddy Jim Fort was hitchhiking up to see me in Green Bay, Wisconsin, where I was going to school. And the guy that picked him up was running these county fair races in Wisconsin with thoroughbreds and quarter horses and mixed breeds and whatever. And my friend Jim told him that I was the assistant track announcer at Arlington Park, and I was looking to break out on my own. And so the guy offered the job through Jim, and I got it. Not only was I not the assistant track announcer at Arlington Park, there was no assistant announcer at Arlington Park. The first race I called was 200 yards long, and the horse that won it, they just called Brownie. The purse was $150 at the Fond du Lac County Fair.
Wow.
And one domino fell right after the other, and I went from working in all the little tracks to the big break I got was working at Hialeah in 1981, and it just went on from there.
Awesome. All right, we're off and running here, and there's a lot of entrepreneurs that are listening to this conversation, and a lot of them can relate to what you just said in terms of fake it until you make it. So I think that would resonate with a lot of people. The other thing that a lot of the listeners are really focused on are building great teams. And you've had the opportunity throughout your career to see and observe some great teams, right? Teams with the owners, the trainers, the jockeys, the athletes themselves. What are some examples of maybe great teams that you've observed, and maybe some things that you could take away from those observations that can help some of our listeners here?
One of the greatest teams I was ever on was NBC Sports. And that one thing you don't realize until you're really doing it is the collaborative effort that goes into a broadcast. Let's say the Super Bowl, where we'll have 130 cameras. At the Derby, we might have 30 or 40.
Sure.
Each one of those cameramen, every guy on audio. And, if I screw up, the world knows it. But one of those guys screw up and the whole team knows it. And everybody does their part to make that a success. That's the best team I was ever on.
Great. Thank you for that. Look, you're an outsider within the wealth management industry, obviously, but everyone needs some type of financial support, advisory support, et cetera. I'd be curious to ask you, how have you approached, looking for or interviewing over the years any financial advisors in your own life?
I don't want a guy that's a gambler. Okay. I've been around gambling the
Plenty of that at
entire
the track. Yeah.
expanse of my career, and you don't gamble with your future.
If you weren't to build your career, as my belief is the greatest race call of all time. If you hadn't done that, what else would you have done?
Well, originally when I was growing up, I grew up in the west side of Chicago, Irish Catholic, whatever, and I thought being the Pope would have been a good job. At that time, priests were extremely admired. They were educated and highly regarded. And but then, as puberty approached, I realized that the celibate lifestyle was not going to be for me. And I've always been a kind of a show-off, I guess, class clown. I'm Irish. We love to tell stories. We love language, nature and nurture. It's a combination of things that will take you anywhere in life. So I think I was kind of, bred for this.
Looking back again on the great career that you've had, any career advice that maybe you've received over the years that you would want to pass on to the audience?
Work on the essentials. One of the most influential books I ever read was a book called The Creative Habit by Twyla Tharp. She was a famous dancer and choreographer. And she went to the ballet bar every day and worked her tush off. It's just what dancers do. And you got to get the basics down. So don't let yourself lose sight of the basic stuff. And again, open yourself up to all sorts of ideas. I was able to advance because I had a narrow focus that was just to call horse races.
Yeah.
Now in wealth management, you've got to expand yourself a little bit more. It's a much broader type of thing, but you have to stay focused, laser in on it.
Yeah.
But you have to open yourself up to a wide variety of interests that can lead you down a path of inspiration.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. We see, the best entrepreneurs that we have the privilege of interacting with are absolutely, as you're describing, Tom, laser focused. And it's tough sometimes because the shiny object syndrome, right, that entrepreneurs have, where they can do a whole host of different things, can be really challenging. But the ones that really hone in and focus on their core competency, the things that give them the competitive advantage and they're best at, are the ones that tend to win disproportionately more over time. So that's great. Okay, Tom, we're turning for home now, right? So we have two questions left.
This is what my horse is doing. I bet on him.
Yeah, hang in there. We got to be strong for us here in the lane. So let's switch back to racing. What's maybe one or two of your favorite race calls that you've ever done? And I know that might be tough. You've done over 80,000 of them. and maybe give us a line or two that, as you've looked back at maybe some of those clips, you're really proud of yourself that you delivered in that moment.
Yeah, just a kind of to give you an idea, words are what I work with. Okay, maybe if you're in wealth management, you work with numbers. I work
Yeah.
with words,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't want to use the same word over and over. Like when people talk all the time now, oh, that's nice. Try to go through a day without saying nice. You can come up with a better word than that. So I had a book. It was basically a thesaurus of words to describe horse races. I had about 60 words to describe fast.
Wow.
My book, in the end, and I added to it virtually every day of my career, had about 2,000 entries in it. So going back to your question, one race I call the 1995 Breeders' Cup Classic with Cigar. He was going to be, if you were to win, he was going to go undefeated that year, very rare. And so I just didn't want to say unbeaten. So he's coming down to the line and he's going to win. And I've got a 16th of a mile. So that's about 12 seconds before he gets to the wire. And I had pounded into my head different words for unbeaten. And when he crossed the wire, I was able to say unconquerable, invincible, unbeatable Cigar.
I love that call.
That was nothing more than a byproduct of hard work. Very simple.
And Cigar, obviously trained by Bill Mott, who is one of the trainers that we use with Team Penny Racing. I know a good friend of yours, also a fellow Walk of Fame member at the Saratoga racetrack. So I'm thrilled that you would pick that race. So the last question that I ask all the guests on Around the Track is one that looks out over the next year or so about a big personal or professional goal that they might have. And at this time of year, as you well know, all the teams are really gearing up and thinking about the Kentucky Derby, right? Whether it's the owners, the trainers, the grooms, the jockeys, all their support, the horses themselves, really gearing up and getting ready for that big goal of the Kentucky Derby. So Tom, as we close out this time together, let me ask you, as you think out over the next year or so, what's your big Kentucky Derby? What's the big goal that's on the horizon for Tom Durkin?
Yeah, not too long ago, because of COVID, there's not a lot to do. So I just went back to some of the interviews that I had when I retired, which was 5 years ago. And one of the things I accomplished a number of the things that I wanted to do. But the one thing that stuck out was I wanted to do something meaningful. So that is my focus this year, to get away from entertaining myself as much, get away from being focused about trying to make money in little projects here, little projects there, but to do something meaningful. That's it.
Got it. And Tom, before we wrap, in your honor and as a thank you for not only spending the time with us today, but also doing some of the voiceover work and continuing to be a bit of my co-host in the future as a result of that. We are going to be making a donation in your name to a charity that I know is very near and dear to your heart, that benefits a lot of the backstretch workers. Can you just take a quick moment and tell our audience about that charity?
Yes, it's called BEST, BEST, Backstretch Employees Services Team. It just tries to care for the people who take care of the horses. We have a medical insurance plan. We have a clinic, a backstretch clinic there. We have scholarships that we have give away to kids. We have any number of social safety nets, alcohol and drug abuse. When COVID came up, BEST just jumped right in there with both feet. So there's many things that BEST does to help out the folks in the backstretch. Free meals at certain points of the year, a free clothing store, It's a hard life back there, boy. Those people work really hard, and
They
not for
sure
a lot
do.
of money.
Yeah.
And racing, and Best in particular, tries to help them out as much as they can.
We're all trying to live our best version of the American dream. And thank you for your support of Best. Thank you for joining us on Around the Track.
It's
Thank you
fun.
for your help and support. It really has been a lot of fun. Thank you, Tom.
All right, I enjoyed it, Shirl. Thanks.